This lesson shows you an example of a program that receives all possible information from the mouse and what can be done to extract that information from the mouse event object that's sent to you in your program. Some of the information is duplicated and can be gotten from the event object in more than one format, so if you don't see here exactly what you need, take a look in the documentation and you may find the form you'd like. For example, there's some stuff in the event about mouse wheels, and you can find that in the documentation if you need it. Now, this class implements both mouse interfaces. It gets called for both the regular mouse events and all mouse motion events. These are string references that are going to be receiving the mouse description information as it comes in. All the paint method does is display these lines of text. Here are the methods that are called with the various mouse events. They don't do anything except call showEvent. That's a method that looks inside the event object and fills the output strings. This is where the buttons and keys are detected. These can be held down, pressed, or released in any combination, so each one is checked here independently. The first few buttons, Alt, Control, Meta, and Shift, are on the keyboard, and these can be held down for any mouse event. By the way, a Meta key is a Unix thing, and it's seldom on the keyboard of any other operating system. In fact, it isn't always on a Unix keyboard, but it happens a lot in Unix software, so the Java system detects it. These three buttons are the mouse buttons. All mice have a button 1. The majority of mice have a button 2, and some mice have a third button. If you're using a 2-button mouse, it will only report button 1 as the one on the left, and button 2 is on the right. For a 3-button mouse, button 1 is on the left, button 2 is in the middle, and button 3 is on the right. Now, these buttons can also be pressed, released, or held down in any combination. The switch case statement determines the type of the event. You will normally already know the type because you already know which method has been called, but the information is also stored inside the event as the ID. The call to the method getClickCount tells you whether this is a double click or whatever. If this method returns a 0, then no mouse button is involved in the event. If the number is 1, this is a single button press. If the number is 2, this is the second of a double click. If 3, it's the third of a triple click. The number can go on up to 6 or 7 or even more, but that's getting to be a pretty difficult thing to do in an interface. I mean, you can just see the user reaction if the instruction says something like, click 5 times real fast on the map. Anyway, the value of the multiple clicks is determined by how close together the button clicks come in time, and this is an adjustable thing. There's usually a system-wide setting that defines the maximum delay between the clicks of a double click. Every mouse event has a location. That's because no matter what else happens, the mouse is always in exactly one place, and this location is specified relative to the upper left-hand corner of the window of the application. Every event has happened at some specific point in time. The time is expressed in milliseconds and is very accurate. It's the time of the event expressed as a count of milliseconds since midnight January 1st, 1970. This timestamp is the one that's used to adjust the click count in the case of multiple clicks within a certain period of time. Finally comes the param string. This method returns a string that contains most of the information we've already displayed, but it comes out of the event already set up in a string format. Once all this is done, a call is made to repaint to put the strings on display in the window. Moving the mouse around the screen causes the program to constantly report that the mouse is moved, and it keeps track of its position. Notice how the information extracted from the individual fields and methods is repeated at the bottom as a single string. The line at the bottom is the one that's returned from the call to the param string method. Every event has a timestamp. The timestamp is the current Java time, 64 bits long, the value of the number of milliseconds since January the 1st, 1970. Now that's a big number now, but there's plenty of room left yet. This 64-bit count can continue for 250,000 years, and its negative value can go just as far into the past. Pressing the left mouse button and keeping the mouse moving shows not only the fact that dragging is taking place, but it also shows which button is being held down. These dragging reports include all the buttons that are being held down. And look at this. The dragging information, along with which button is being held down, is maintained outside the window until the button is released. Remember that you'll get pressed and released notifications for all of the mouse buttons, but you don't get separate notifications for the keyboard keys. The keyboard is separate. I'll cover that in the next lesson.